Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Carry On Friends, the Caribbean American experience. And maybe we are going to call this the Caribbean International experience because of my guest today. Tsahia is my guest, and I'm excited. She is my second guest who is from Paris,
Mhm.
but we'll get more into that. Tsahia, welcome to the
Mhm.
podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm wonderful, and I'm excited to speak with you. So thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. So I already told the audience that you are
Mhm.
joining us from Paris.
Yes.
So tell the audience a little bit more about who you are, Caribbean country you represent, the work you do, and most importantly, why
Yeah.
you're in Paris.
Sure. Oh my goodness. So where can I start? Well, I like to represent Jamaica because that's where my parents are from. And I'm first generation, my sister and I, American. My parents got married in Jamaica, but found themselves in Iowa. My dad studied agronomy, and my mom studied education. And so I grew up in Iowa, but I had a lot of family, especially on my mom's side in Brooklyn, New York. So after I left high school in Des Moines, Iowa, I went over to Brooklyn and I was going to start school there at Pace University, but ended up finishing oh, yeah. Ended up finishing my degree at City College of New York, which is also where my dad went, and, I also did a master's degree, at Columbia University, but I spent maybe, like, I don't know, like 15, 16 years in New York, and then after that, after my master's, I took kind of a plunge and I decided to change coasts, and so I went over to California for a bit, stayed there for a couple of years, but decided it wasn't quite my vibe, so I ended up going down to Florida to stay, with family for a bit during the pandemic, that was, like, crazy times, and then I launched, a consulting practice, actually, and I ended up in Houston, Texas, where, I met a lot of great people and then eventually started, kind of working in corporate again, but, had a great experience in Houston and throughout, my travels in the United States and places that I lived. I can say now, like, well, Texas is not quite like this. I lived there, like I got to really experience a lot of different places around the US. And why am I in Paris? Well, because Jamaicans like to be everywhere. So I think it's like in our DNA, we cannot help ourselves. But the deeper reason is really because it was something that I did for me. It was always a dream that I wanted to be in Paris. Now, the choice of study, I went back to school and I studied luxury marketing. Before this, I was in the healthcare industry in the US for like 20 years. So I did everything in like academic centers, insurance, hospitals, consulting, you name it. Even got the first master's in that. But I just kind of decided, this was not really for me anymore. And France was always just a place, like, I had fallen in love with, the culture, the food, the fashion, lifestyle, maybe even, the fantasy of it all, so I decided, I was gonna change my career, just make a pivot, do something really original just for me, and, yeah, and here I am in Paris. So
So here you said so many things.
sorry.
I
Yeah.
mean, no, 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 sorry. This is amazing. This is
Yeah.
incredible.
No,
I want
sure.
to touch on a bunch of stuff. So big up to fellow Pace person. I went to Pace in
Yes.
Pleasantville,
Okay.
Briarcliff campus, though.
Ah, nice, nice.
Yes, yes. And then agronomy. That's what you say your father studied?
Yes, and he's also an attorney. So
Oh,
he's a pivoter as well because he left agronomy and then went into law, which he's still a practicing lawyer in Orlando, Florida. So shout
and
out
what's
to my
his
dad.
agronomy?
It's soil sciences. So I take it kind of as it's almost
You
like
study dirt.
biology. Yeah, with farm. And when I was little, it was funny because I always thought that I was like, wow, he can just plant anything, Like, I don't know if you know the African violets, but he would take a stem and he would just put it in water. It would grow. We had peonies, marigolds, everything would grow. But it wasn't until later on I learned that, he has like a PhD in this kind of stuff. So he can grow anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing, that's amazing. It's good to know that. Now, I want you to talk to me about growing up in Iowa, Des
Sure.
Moines, where,
Yeah.
I lived in the Midwest at one point of my life, so I
Is in
want
Wisconsin.
Yes,
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 yes.
yes. So I want you to talk to me about what it was like growing up in Des
Yeah.
Moines and, did you have, like, a Caribbean community? What was that like for you and your
Oh,
family?
wow. What was taking me back? I had, I think, a pretty great childhood growing up in Des Moines. Like, we lived in a pretty sort of what you might say middle class neighborhood. I walked to school, mowed the lawn, planted flowers, like this kind of stuff. Um, Going to school was, for the most part, great. I have sometimes, where I remember really great things because I had teachers who really loved to, like, foster debate, who were just very passionate about teaching, about education, and many of them, I remember to this day. And I also had kind of experiences growing up there where I didn't kind of know where I fit in some ways because I'm a Black woman, my parents are Jamaican, and I felt like sometimes people didn't know some people, I would say sometimes mostly school children, didn't really know what to do with that, They're like, "Why do you talk this way?" Or, "Why do you dress that way?" And I'm like, "'Cause my mom's not letting me come to school with my belly out." You know what I mean? She's just not having that. And, "Why are you such a nerd?" Well, because again, my mom's not having that, She said, "Education is the key to our future," and, my job was to go to school and to learn and, to be a good student. I did my best. Um, but yeah, so it was kind of like, not really fitting in sometimes or having this place because people wanna kinda put you into this box and they don't understand, what is this like Jamaican culture? What is this thing, that you're eating or this accent, etc. But I was fortunate to find, really good people to connect with and, to hang out with, be friends with, some of whom, I'm still in contact with to this day, which is amazing. And also, too, Iowa was interesting because my mom was an educator, and she ran, like, a daycare in our home, and so sometimes I come home from school and, like, the kids are all at nap time, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, can I have some peace?" You know? But, she took education really seriously, and so she had a great community of people that, the kids their parents that, she was teaching, these were younger children, and primarily, like, in the Black community, so there was this real bond as well over her, taking care of the kids, them, welcoming us, to the state of Iowa, if you will, but also it was interesting, she had a lot of, church friends, and so at church, they would have things like wild game feast where some of the guys would go hunting, and they would bring pheasant, and she would curry the pheasant. And they were like, "What is this?" And, she would make rice and peas, different things like that. So, there were a lot of ways that I think, also my parents, really found ways to bond with the community that created, like, a supportive environment, for me growing up, so
Wow, that
yeah.
is amazing. Also, growing up, not here in the US, but in
Yes.
Jamaica, my grandmother brought the daycare into the house, so I
Oh, yeah.
understand completely. When the
Yes.
daycare was in the building before the
Uh-huh.
hurricane blew down the building,
Ah,
I had
yes.
to work at the daycare, and I was pretty young, like, but it was how my brother and I, we were the mini playmakers because we were young,
Okay.
so,
Yeah.
whatever we wanna play and do, the little kids would follow us, so,
Yeah.
that was helpful. But as we got older, the daycare came to our house and, the
Sure.
work didn't feel much fun anymore, but I do connect with, what that's like and building
Sure.
relationship with the parents, and the
Yeah.
families of the kids who came to the daycare that's at home, so that's awesome.
Definitely, and I would just add too, some of the kids who are in the daycare, like, I know them. One of them even came to Paris just a while back. She's just a few years, no, she's several this one is several years younger because I actually used to babysit her, so to see her all grown up now is, like, amazing. So, all
Yeah.
good kids.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. Alright,
Yeah,
so you pivot from healthcare to
yeah.
luxury marketing. Why Mick? Or I was being nice, but Womack, why?
Yeah.
Why what was that? I know pivoting is
Ah,
in your
yes.
bones because daddy did it, but, like,
Yeah,
you wanted to Paris was always a draw, but what specifically luxury marketing?
sure. Yeah, because, working in healthcare, I loved it for many years, and I mean, really, really loved it, and I had great experiences, and I had, challenges working in the industry, but I think after some time, I had some personal, situation myself, and then also just professionally, it felt like, always a day even if you have a great team, just kind of combating the system itself. When you really want to deliver something excellent, for patients, for companies, etcetera. So, I just found that, wow, there's so many barriers here or kind of always getting the question of, "Who's gonna pay for it?" And for me, it's like, I just wanna be able to launch something to take care of people. Of course, it's like I don't want to not be within the regulations and codes, but if a program is good, I wanna be able to stand up this program and, like, do it soon. But I think it just were things that took a long time to get done, and through, no one's fault or anything, it's just a system that we have, and I also just thought, I really wanted to be around something I think that would really make me feel happy. And I remembered like happy places, always being in Paris, shopping. You come, you go to some of the stores, the boutiques, you get the champagne, you have the experience. Like this always stood out in my mind. And I started to take up French again. And my tutor at the time, she used to teach a class at a university in Georgia where she was teaching students about like the history of Louis Vuitton, Christian Dior, these great designers or companies, brands that we all know today. And I asked her, I said, wow, you can study this? Is this some kind of like science? Because I only know this as a consumer. And she said, yeah, because a lot of these brands, of course, have been around for hundreds of years. So it's part of art, it's part of history, and I just started to really do some research and think like, wow, what might my life look like if I could pursue something like this? And also, I had been asked this question, what would you do if money were no object? And that was like a powerful question because I think for me, I'm like, no, money's always an object. It's always a consideration. How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to do this or that or the other? And it was really tough to sort of put that aside and challenge myself to say, if you were doing anything, what would it be? And I was like, I would go to France. I would go to Paris and then be around or be in an industry, that I've come to love, which is the luxury industry. So that's a lot of that is really what's brought me here to this country.
what would your advice be to someone who's pivoting industries? Because it's one thing to pivot and remain in the industry, but you've pivoted industry, and I mean, you
Mhm.
also have your dad who's pivoted
Mm.
industries as well. What
Yes.
have been some of the lessons that you've gotten from him and now you've applied to your life that you would, offer to someone else?
Yeah, sure. Oh my goodness. What lessons has my dad taught me? No, he's taught me great lessons. He was super supportive, and I would say all my family was really supportive when I told them that I wanted to make this move to Paris. My dad's advice was really to go for it. He said, when he was younger, even though he came from Jamaica, in New York and also Iowa, he said, he kind of wished that he had done some more traveling abroad, maybe seen a few other countries, etc. So, he's, like, very practical, kind of like, "Well, can you do it? Do you want to do it? Well, just do it." And so I did it. But also, I saw how he really loves, like, the law, and he loves to practice law, and, I think that it was great for him to make the pivot that he did. I'm sure he could have been happy in agronomy as well, but, I mean, he has a love for the law, and I think that is great because it also shows people that, I mean, you can do something for a long time and make a change and fall in love, with something else. So, I think those 2 lessons are probably, the biggest ones that I can think of, but I'm sure you have many lessons as well. Being an entrepreneur is maybe you've made a lot of pivots or
I've had to pivot different roles, different
Yeah.
industries, and I think, um, the lessons that I've learned is
Mhm.
just taking a step back, and
Mhm.
it's I think I'm more like your dad, I'm very practical,
Mhm.
is take a step back. Can I do this? Do I want to do
Yeah.
this, right? Because
Right.
we don't want left wanting to end up in misery doing something else, right?
No,
So that's the
exactly.
first practical thing, and then,
Mm.
embrace the fear of or the butterflies of the unknown. I don't
Right.
wanna say fear because there's a lot of
Sure.
uncertainty, and
Mhm.
then just do it, and
Yeah.
then if you get the itch another 3 years to pivot again, just do it, like, just
Yeah.
lean into it, and I think,
Yeah.
um sometimes we don't want to lean into it because you go back to this thing of starting over again, right? And sometimes maybe
Right.
some of that advice or maybe I don't know if you told anyone that you were going to Paris and, you know,
Yes.
some of they're projecting some of their uncertainty on you because
Sure.
this is a big move to pick up and
Right.
move and do all of this and,
Right.
sometimes we don't pivot even on a smaller scale because it's starting over and having to deal with those initial uncertainties that don't feel comfortable, so
The feelings of, difficulties or challenges and being uncomfortable is so, so real. There are so many, there's I think sometimes media that's projected that's like, "Oh, you can just get up and do this," and especially Paris, you'll be in cafes all day, you'll be strolling the street all day, and like drinking wine all day. And I'm like, this is not the reality, like there's a lot of things that can be very uncomfortable, and there's a lot of stress that also I think came with the move. I still love that I'm here, but I mean, I have to acknowledge like there were difficulties and there's still difficulties. So,
you mean to
yeah, I
tell me
agree.
you're not having picnics under the Eiffel Tower every week? I mean, I'm just
Absolutely not, absolutely not. I wish. I do get to see it sparkle, and I'm still, like it's still very magical for me to see, like, the Eiffel Tower sparkle, but I wish but right now too, I mean, it's hot, the buildings don't have AC. I'm looking for an AC, I have my fan on, I'm trying to rig things up and, keep the heat out and, drink a lot of ice water. There's definitely some things that are more comfortable in the fall, like, yeah, doing that picnic or doing it in the spring every week, but, like, right now in the summer, no.
Absolutely
Uh-uh.
not. Alright, so you were taking French. Where's your level of French now? How hard that was to kinda
Yeah,
learn this new language and get settled in and finding a community there?
sure. Oh, well, first with the language, I will tell you that I was telling a French friend of mine, we were walking and speaking together. I'm at about, an intermediate level. So there's a lot of things that I can understand. There's a lot of vocabulary. Um, and I can go and, do common things and navigate my way generally through life here. But um, it's always kind of this work in progress, especially here because Parisians speak quite fast. So sometimes, they're saying this whole thing and I heard it, but my brain is like over here still, it's at the beginning of the sentence. Um, French has been, I think, one of the biggest challenges of my life, honestly. And I say that also because when I did the master's program, it was in English. I didn't want to do it in French because I just felt, that's gonna be way too much pressure and stress for me. So it was in English, and there was just so much work and not a lot of space and time to learn French, and also for myself, I had a lot of shyness and maybe felt a little intimidated, even though I had friends who were like, "You should practice. We can practice together." But I think now I'm more so getting over that and just going along, really trying to do French when I can, listen to French, but, when things were stressful, I'm like, "Look, I don't wanna hear anything French. I don't wanna I don't wanna listen to any French music. I don't wanna listen to any French news. I just want to, like, put on my Spotify playlist or whatever and listen, to the music that I like, the podcast I like, etcetera." But now I'm at a better place. Things have, like, settled down, and I've sort of, like, recharged my goals, if you will,
Alright,
but
we're
it's
gonna get to
tough.
some of those goals, but in your
Mhm.
transition from the US
Yeah.
to France, what part of your Jamaican, broadly Caribbean identity did you or do you find yourself holding on to the most?
Oh, wow. Well, in my room, I have 2 flags that I got from the Olympics.
I was gonna ask you about that, but I'm like,
And
wait, go
oh,
ahead."
no, no, no. Yeah, yeah. I was at the Olympics, me and, my other friend from, London who's Jamaican, born and grew up, but in London now. So, yeah, we went to the Olympics. We had on our Jamaican colors. We went to the Jamaica House. We had our flags. We got to see the women's 100-meter race. I wanted to see Shelly Ann and Sherika, but didn't get to see them, but I understand. I did get to cheer for Tia. I think she won one of the heats. I mean, she's so impressive. Tia Clayton running, I think, yes, Tia and her sister running the 100-meter
Mhm.
race. And yeah, I mean, and the food, like, there's a place called Big Black Cook. Want everybody to know I said cook. And, they are a restaurant, very small here, but they do make some Caribbean dishes. So, they have a curry chicken and rice and peas dish. So when I'm, like, feeling in the mood, I need some food or I want to kinda connect, I go there and I have, like, the curry chicken and rice and peas, and I think, like, maybe, like, a ginger beer. And there's a couple other Jamaican restaurants. There's, like, I think a vegan one and another one called Jamrock that opened, I believe, this year or last year. So I try to keep myself connected really with food. That's a huge thing for me. What else? And I think just maybe personality, music is huge for me when I'm commuting in the mornings and I need to something to make me feel grounded. I put on the music, I listen to, like, Beres Hammond, like, old school music, and then also when I need some more, like, energy, I put on some soca music from Trinidad. So but, yeah, I keep those things with me, and I have not been back to Jamaica since I've been here. I would like to, but I did get a chance to go to Barbados, last month, and it was amazing to, like, see friends, be on the island, the people, the hospitality, the waters, like, the beach, the food, incredible. So, yeah, I try to stay very connected.
Wonderful. All right. So talk to me now. You switch,
Yes,
you're doing luxury marketing. How is that
yes.
going? What is this luxury marketing? What are you doing? All the things.
Sure. So actually, we just finished really the sort of class portion of the program. So I did that for, I would say about 9 months. And then now I'm in the process of looking for an internship or full time position here in Paris. So I'd like to stay here. Um, but yeah, luxury marketing really focus on marketing for the luxury industry and understanding the science behind how luxury companies market themselves and understanding also so much and learning so much about French and Italian luxury brands, but especially French brands. And then in all aspects of the luxury industry as well, from cars to watches, jewelry, fashion, leather goods, etc. Like all of these aspects of the industry that you can focus on marketing, promotion, understanding how they do storytelling as well, how they differentiate themselves from competitors in the market, and then some of the techniques that they use from history, especially in art, to even further like elevate the luxury brands, which was a great experience. So, for example, some brands will, in their marketing campaigns, will draw from something back in history, like in France, say from, Louis the 14th or Marie Antoinette or an eagle, or they'll tell stories around a certain type of flower that the founder loved, like the camellia flower that Chanel loved, or stories about the trunk, with Louis Vuitton, how it all started. And they kind of draw from this, which is really different from, let's say, mass market marketing. Like if you're Zara, H&M, you want to have quantity, 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 reach as many people as possible, sell as much as possible. But luxury, even though they're present, you might say that they whisper in some ways. But also, it's been super interesting to understand how luxury companies are now moving into broader spaces. So, for example, I don't know if you saw in New York, like the new Louis Vuitton cafe that's opened. Prada has a cafe as well. So they're moving into these different areas in like hospitality, hotel. There's a new Louis Vuitton hotel opening next year. So I did a project around that, and that was really great to also do some field work and check out different like five-star hotels here in Paris and Milan, and see kind of how they're truly differentiating, themselves from everyone else, and really what are those facets that make them luxury. So, like for example, here in Paris, there's something called a palace distinction. And actually, it's not just in Paris, but it's in all of France. And so, this distinction is awarded to certain hotels that meet a certain criteria that's even above and beyond five-star service, amenities, etc. And that was great visiting those and doing field research, and just seeing like how they operate, how they welcome you, their offerings, their storytelling, etc. So Long story short, yes, these were all of the things that I got to study. Yeah, the fashion brands, craftsmanship, wines. I love wine and spirits. So I could go on, but yeah, all these different niches, if you will, in the luxury industry.
I mean, a lot of people study luxury marketing, for lack of a better word.
Mhm.
How do you feel that you bring something different to the space, of luxury marketing? I mean, you might know more than me, but luxury marketing is luxury
Mhm.
marketing, and the people who can afford luxury marketing is even smaller, right? So how
Mhm.
do you get into that space, and how do you differentiate in that space, if that makes sense?
Yeah, sure. I think for myself personally, and to your first question, like what do I bring to the table? I think, first it's a love for this industry and really which started, I think, with fashion. Some of my favorite brands are here, but also it was this experience or this ritual that you could have when you came here. Let's say if you went to Louis Vuitton and you were buying something and you have the opportunity to be presented with different items, have the glass of champagne, have some, interaction. And some of this stuff seems simple, but it's really kind of an art form if they do it well, because whatever your budget is, when you come into one of these places, you should feel like you're welcomed. You should feel like you're being, treated with respect. And I used to think about how could I sort of apply this to the healthcare industry, because I wondered, different times, like, for example, with patients, if we, provided them with different sets of sheets, that were feeling more luxurious, would they feel a bit more comfortable? If we take the service approach, how can we, in hospitals or insurance companies, have a more maybe service minded or client guest centered approach so everybody feels like, I mean, yes, you might be calling about a bill or, something unpleasant, but you still want to feel like you're cared for, you're welcomed, you're special, you're one of a kind, especially in the healthcare industry with people dealing with, so many different and very serious issues. So that's one thing I would say, I bring this perspective from healthcare that does take from the luxury industry and thinking about a service model, but also more of a delicacy because I've had to talk to patients or design programs with a very specific focus, a very, niche focus, and one that requires an enormous amount of empathy, of course, and understanding. So there's that. But also, I think, as a consumer, I am somebody who welcomes a positive experience. I want to be treated well. My parents raised me this way, and I am, I love kind of don't want to just call it the service model of it, but like this kind of ritual. And I know what people, I think, like and expect and how they want to be treated. And that's like super important to me, because when I go into any place, I watch how other people are treated. I watch how I am treated. And I'm really focused on that and ensuring that, people have great experiences. And I love seeing people happy. Luxury is a joy. It should make you happy. It shouldn't make you feel bad.
You're
So,
you're right. It's so as I'm hearing you, it's really the hospitality of it. It's
yes,
how the person feels, and,
yes,
at the end of the day, it's why people have, brand loyalty to certain things, right?
absolutely.
It's that's part of the marketing. Why will someone always buy this? It's
Yes.
because it's how it makes them feel. And sometimes from a psychological standpoint, you know I've heard that for every negative experience, you need like 5 positive, 3 to 5 positive experiences. So
Mm.
it's like I had such an amazing positive experience with this brand, like,
Y
I'm going to stay with them, like,
yes.
I'll give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
There's a tool, there's a software, it's a brand.
Uh-huh.
They have a
Okay.
suite of things, right?
Mhm.
And the first time I started podcasting, it was, like, the most difficult thing to learn. I was
Uh-huh.
just like it was like putting a new flight student into a 747
Right.
versus a little seaplane, and I know where I am 10 years later
Right.
podcasting that I could master that tool, but I can't touch that tool with a 10-foot pole. I'm like, I can't. I want to, but I just
Right.
can't. Just can't.
Uh-huh.
And I really think that's what these, luxury marketing is wanting to make such a great first impression that it stays with
Definitely.
you for almost for life, really.
Yeah, and, the other thing is too that, um, I think the market is changing so much because I think the traditional customer of luxury has changed. There are different pockets of people all over the world who are attaining, for
New
better or for
money.
worse,
Just say new
yeah,
money,
new
new
money
money.
through tech, online, opening businesses, food, whatever it is. There are a lot of people who are, yeah, getting, this new money. So the landscape of the, traditional client, this has changed. And the market, if they want to be very successful, should adapt to this, and I think that what I also bring, to the table is my own lived experience, right? And and I think that's important because, some industries are, quicker to change and some are, slower to change. I think luxury may be one of the industries, at least from what I understand, that has somewhat focused on sometimes traditional maybe marketing or messaging. I mean, but definitely there are some really creative campaigns. But, the thing is too, how can you, let's say, market to the Caribbean, or how do you market to Africa or Latin America? These are, or Asia. They're very diverse audiences that today companies need to reach. And I think that, working in complicated industries with a lot of people and even coming to an international program has really given me a sense of, what are other people thinking? What does the market in Milan traditionally like, or what does the market in Hong Kong traditionally like?
Mm.
I got to meet a lot of different people from all over the world. So I bring, my own sort of American, Jamaican, life lived experience, but also I've been able to connect with a lot of different people. So I'm hoping to kind of apply some of that sensibility to, companies and help them market their products and services.
Alright.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up
Yes.
and we reflect on this conversation, right?
Mhm.
In some ways, you took a traditional path and then you've kinda moved around a little bit, and so
Right.
for fun and for joke, we tell this one story that, Caribbean and Jamaican parents expect you to go to school and do this
Yes.
and do to work. We know it's not always true, but, it's part of the funny story. Um,
Mhm.
but that's not true because you're living that, right? And
Mhm.
so how do you define success for yourself given this varied experience, and what do you want other Caribbean Americans or anyone in the Caribbean diaspora, wherever they are in the world, to learn about? We can laugh at that one story because it's funny, right?
Sure.
But we can also be bold and brave and lean into, you know, what success looks like that is different from what our parents envisioned for us.
Yeah, definitely. I think, success for me is I still maybe wonder because I think maybe I'll know when I reach it. I celebrate the milestones, but I'm not sure that I have reached sort of success yet. I feel because I just feel like there's so many things that I want to do and I need to do. And maybe, success would really look like also being able to do something in Jamaica. My dad, I laugh because I I said to him, I said, "I'm such a dreamer, right? I'm always calling him about this idea or that." And I feel like success could really be, doing something in Jamaica as well. And, maybe even, in honor of, my mom, who passed some years ago. And, she had always wanted to go back. And that's why I go back a big part of it because I try to live that experience. I don't know, hoping that, she'll see me there and see me happy and things like that. Um, and then the second part to your question, the first was, what does success look like? And the second was to
Leaning into different types of success,
ah,
that it might look
yes.
different from what our parents might have
Mhm.
envisioned for themselves or for us.
Yes. Okay. So leaning in. Um, wow. Again, I'm a risk taker, but I'm also quite practical. So people have to determine their own risk tolerance. I always say this, but I feel like this experience has been so great because you can find community abroad, or if you make a change and you really apply yourself, you'll meet the right people who connect, to you or with you and enhance your life. And I feel like, I spent many years being super practical and working as I was supposed to work, right? But this was really a decision specifically for me. And I think that if there's something that you want to do just for you, then make your plan, take the risk, and go for it, and trust that you'll land on your feet.
So, you're in
Hmm.
Paris.
Yes.
How do you how do you maintain connection with your family on the other side of the world? How do you connect?
Yes. WhatsApp. But also a lot of WhatsApp, a lot of technology, I would say. But when I have time, like in the evening right now, or sometimes in my afternoon is their early morning. I know they're just waking up, so I call them. And so we definitely use a lot of social media as well to stay connected. We send photos, they read my blog sometimes. And those are all good ways, but also through platforms, like your own. I did want to connect with you too, because there's definitely a few Jamaicans that are out here. There's an organization, Jamaicans in France, and so there are a few of us, who are here. They've had some events here and there, and I hope to connect with the community as well. But I think overall, just if I think about my immediate family, social media, calls, etc., but my Jamaican family, my Caribbean family, definitely through platforms, like yours, where I can connect with more people. They can connect with me if they want, because really I just want to be able to encourage people to make that move or to make that change, and to know that if they want to come to this side, one of us is here and, they can reach out, if they have questions or whatnot.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I love
Mm.
this idea of Jamaicans in Paris. So,
Yes.
I have this model that I just introduced, and it's really based on my experience moving here,
Mhm,
from Jamaica when I was younger, and
mhm.
I talked about how even though I lived in Wisconsin, and it's clearly
Yes,
not Brooklyn with a whole bunch of Jamaica, there was you're able to find a small community, and it's even
yes.
more intentional and the connection because your mom was currying the pheasant, but me wanna know where did
Yeah,
your mother get the curry from, right? So there's some
yeah,
community, not
yes.
big and broad like Florida, New York
No.
or Boston, but it does exist. And even you talking about the Jamaicans in France,
Yeah.
we find community, and because we have to be intentional, like you're being
Mhm.
intentional, connecting with your family,
Definitely.
connecting with the podcast, you your connection to culture is then different because it's so intentional for you to maintain this versus you just go outside and you step outside your house in
Yeah,
Brooklyn and
no.
you smell jerk chicken, like, where
Oh,
that
you know,
way.
you might smell some, like, beef bourguignon or a baguette. You're gonna smell bread, or you might smell, cheese, from the fromagerie. Yeah, that's what you're gonna smell here. A lot of
Right.
bread, for sure.
Right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
this idea of geography and how that impacts how much you're connected to
Yes.
culture. So, this was timely and perfect. So, Sahia, listen, let me know offline. I know somebody else who's in Paris. She's
Okay.
Guadeloupe, of Guadeloupe
Yes.
heritage,
Yes.
but she's been on the podcast a couple times, and I
Okay.
adore her. She is really amazing. So I would want to put you both in touch. And
Sure.
I mean, thank you again for being on the podcast. This has been really great getting to know you and your luxury marketing. And
Thank you.
when things kick off, I
Yeah.
expect you to come back and tell me, oh, you are
Yeah.
doing the most in luxury marketing, especially in what they're calling emerging markets. But you don't know, we
Yes.
already exist. We're not
We
emerged.
already there.
We already
Major.
arrived.
Exactly. We're major.
Yes, yes.
So,
So
yeah.
I'm excited for you and this adventure. And then maybe we can do a live stream to the Jamaicans in Paris, like Wagwan.
Yeah. That would be amazing. There's a few I have to reach out to some people, so because I wanna make sure they get this.
Yes. Oh my goodness. This has been amazing. Well,
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to share with our audience before we close?
Oh, sure. Thank you. I would share that I'm trying to get better at this, but I do write a blog at sahiahobson.com. And on the blog, I share tips about the luxury industry, my life in Paris. I share pictures and things like that. So if people are kind of curious about, oh, what am I up to, or what might, look good to do in Paris, or they want some insights about the industry, then, they can go and check out my blog and, feel free to contact me if there's anything that they want to see. I'm happy to explore that so people can, live a little vicariously through me. So I
Yeah.
want to share that.
Wonderful. And I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Oh,
Sahia,
thank you.
thank you so much for coming on, giving us a little insight as to what you're doing in Paris, your background. Wow, agronomy, Iowa, Des Moines. Definitely a first, but Midwest, we're always going to represent.
Yes.
So thank you again for being on the podcast. And as I love to say at the end of every episode, walk good.
Thank you.